Hi, hello. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. 844-766-6607. Hickson Has It hotline. If you'd like to be part of the program, it's your opportunity to be a voice. And on the Hickson Has It hotline, Elliott Stonecipher joins me. Elliott, been a long time. Hope you're doing well.
Doing well, Moon. Seems like there's a lot of stuff going on these days.
Everywhere you turn, you run into something. I suggest don't walk backwards because you will hit something pretty quick.
That's true.
Of course, elected officials, to me, they run backwards. But anyway, beside the point. All right. Money may transform Louisiana and coast. BP money. Tell me what's going on with this.
You know, that article is, by the way, that's a Gannett News article. Ken Stickney is the one who actually wrote this piece. As you know, he was for a long time kind of the publisher of the Monroe version of the Gannett.
Yeah, I knew exactly who Ken Stickney was.
Gotcha, I know. The man in this article, I hope everybody will find it and read it. It's just fascinating stuff to me. The man who has been the administrator of our state's BP settlement from the BP oil spill. He's an attorney named Patrick Juneau in Lafayette. This is kind of about the work he has done for the state of Louisiana in securing as much money from BP as he can. And the reason that I find it fascinating is because we find out that aside from the fact that Louisiana stands to score billions and billions of dollars, and the number varies, it may be $6 billion, it may be $9 billion, but in addition to that, Moon, what you see in here is that some parts of the money, $200 million worth at least, have already been used by the state, by the governor's office, in helping to alleviate, the so-called budget deficit.
But you remember last year, Ellie, when we talked about this, we said they were going to use $200 million. They were doing the same thing General Administration was accused of doing, using one-time money, taking money and using it for this purpose when that was not the purpose of it.
Right. And now that we know that happened the way it did, it raises the obvious question. How much of the BP money is really about restoring the coast? And how much of it is Play-Doh for Louisiana politicians? It scares me to death that we're going to find out that there are a lot of things in the existing budget, and I'm talking about just the straight basic costs of the state, where we're still running so-called deficits. I don't believe any of that, by the way, but I'll skip that for now. Here we have this new pot of money. We have confirmation that we can take parts of other revenue sources that are so-called running short, and we can replace that money with this sacrosanct BP money. If you can do it with $200 million, how much of it can they do? And here's my point in all this. And by the way, this Mr. Juneau, this attorney in Lafayette, the administrator, is making it very, very clear that he thinks this is an incredible windfall for Louisiana, that it has way, way more potential for the state than we're being told. And I tend to agree with him based on the numbers that are in this article. I think as we watch this administration and their absolute addiction to taxes, as we watch, and tax increases, as we watch that play out, I think this is one of the things we'll be able to watch pretty closely. If they can reach over and hit this money, instead of cutting costs, instead of downsizing state government, which we're 35 years at least late in doing, then it's one more way that we will always know that they're not shooting straight with us. We thought they could spend $200 million out of the BP money, as you say, and then we were told they couldn't. Then we were told by another source that they could. Then we were finally told by a second source they couldn't. Come to find out.
And they did.
They did.
They did, correct.
And, look, who told us this story, man? Did Jay Darden ever tell us about this?
No, not going to.
Did the governor ever say, by the way, all these things that we tell y'all we don't have the money to do, wink, wink, nod, nod?
By the way, I hadn't even seen a Scott Angel commercial down here telling us they did. I haven't. I'm being honest with you. Scott didn't even ran a commercial saying he didn't do it.
Yeah, I got it. I just thought this. Look, the article on its face is very important for Louisiana. I don't know Mr. Juneau. It looks to me like he has done an extraordinary job, and that BP did everything they could to run him off, but he's been the administrator since 2012. He's done apparently just an outstanding job, as has the judge. And I think the judge's name is Barbier. Somebody will correct me on that. But it's Carl, B-A-R-B-I-E-R. Mm-hmm. And I think I've heard it's called Barbier. The point is, it took both of these gentlemen to hold the line against BP. We certainly don't want their effort to be flittered away or frittered away, because we've got an administration in Baton Rouge that has an addiction to tax increases that's unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, Elliott, a question on that. Do you believe, and this is just maybe hypothetical, you may can prove it, do you believe all of them run up of we ain't got no money, we broke, that's being told by the Gannett newspapers, the Advocate, Jay Darden, the governor, legislature, we broke. You think it's just a markup so they can get tax reform, which would be even higher taxes on the people?
I don't know, Moon.
I mean, it's a lie. I guess it's a lie. That makes it simple.
Look, here's what we do know. Unlike 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it is now in America, including Louisiana, which I didn't think I would see in my lifetime, it is now okay in America to just act as a political party, Democrats, as if we are already socialist, and that it is appropriate to take all the tax money that you can get your hands on, no matter whether you're telling the truth or not, no matter whether there's something fundamental that ought to be done differently. It's just the way it is now. And we didn't think that would happen here, but it has. So what do we know? We know to never, ever, 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 ever believe what they tell us about how much money they need.
I never had. Here's the thing, me and you have it.
Government, and it hurts, then we just know not to believe.
It's the spending stupid. The flood is probably going to bring more revenue in. When you think about 125,000 homes, you think about vehicles. I've seen a number of 75,000.
Yeah.
You look at every piece of wood, sheetrock, molding. Without going any further, go on and on and on. You saw the floods of the spring. This probably was more severe because it was more people. It was no more severe than somebody got flooded in your area. And you start looking at all that stuff and the spending. They're going to get a bunch of money in, and I think what it is to say, hey, in 4 years, look how good a job we did managing the money since Bobby Jindal. But the fact is, we were helped by major tax increases, number one, and number two is from a flood.
Well, and let's mention this about the flood. Number one, I understand how many people were not properly insured. Mm-hmm. And there's a scandal buried in that we're all going to wake up one day and say, my Lord, why didn't somebody tell us about FEMA and flood insurance and why people don't have it? But having said that, and let's remember that, it's important, we know a lot of people are going to have great difficulty making themselves whole. In fact, very few will.
That's a fact. That's happening now.
Right. Having said that, all the money that you just mentioned that is pouring into South Louisiana households to do whatever they can do to restore themselves, think about that. That's coming from federal sources. That's coming from private insurance sources. It's a lot of money that was not coming here otherwise.
Nope.
We didn't budget to have a whole lot of insurance companies, including FEMA and flood insurance. We didn't budget how much money that is that suddenly came to Louisiana. And I don't mean just the sales tax. I mean a lot of other ways, too. So we know that happened, just like we now know that BP ended up doing exactly what we were told, and then we were told we were wrong, all of which adds up to this. When that revenue estimating conference has its next meeting and comes out and tells us that the sky is falling and that we have to raise the gasoline tax, we have to raise income taxes, we have to raise franchise taxes on businesses, when they do that, I hope everybody will just remember, now wait a minute, how can that be true? Especially right now. Maybe it's going to be true a year from now, But how can that be true with all of this extraordinary income?
Yeah, Elliott, let me take a break. I want you to stick on that. I got a couple key questions that I think you can really help us with. Number one, we got a Katrina effect. We had all this money coming in and it was gone and no economy. And why does all the money go to the government and the people really need the help? Just your thoughts on that when we get back. Elliott Stonecipher, my special guest. You're listening to the Moon Griffon Show. We'll take a break. Be right back. Hi, y'all. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. 844-766-6607. Hickson has it hotline. Elliott Stonecipher, my special guest, and the money going into Baton Rouge. How much money is really in Baton Rouge, and why all the tax increases and all the things they're going to use? Elliott explaining this. Elliott, let me ask a quick question, two of them basically. You've done a great job of explaining the Katrina effect with the amount of money coming in and how we lost people. And some of those people came back, but we really lost a bunch of people. But,
yes.
But we had a lot of money that was poured into our budget. Then we looked up, we didn't have the money to fix anything or fix our budget problems because we had added all this new money in. That was one-time money. Is that the same kind of effect we're going to have again? Maybe not as big, but something similar?
Yeah. Why would we believe that they ever figured out that you don't spend one-time money as if it is recurring? The best example there has been in Louisiana history that we know of, and we don't know how budgeting was done after the Great Flood in 1927, but we know after Katrina, that's exactly what they did, and they put whole programs into state government funded with windfall one-time money that stayed in place, that had employees that then fought to keep it alive. And that's why we've ended up with these big tax increases. So my expectation is absolutely it's going to be done again. And I believe this administration will be no different or better, probably worse, than Bobby Jindal's in terms of letting that happen.
And I think don't you think it's really by design? They control the media. They control the media, what gets out in the media, what people read and listen to.
Exactly. And I mean, that's my whole point about, and you know this, that's our point about the legislature. I mean, we all know that government in any such democracy, let's just call it that for this purpose,
sure,
is always going to need three branches of government. You don't want to mix legislative, executive, and judicial. Our problem here is that we elect kings instead of governors. That's a huge mistake. What we did this time is the king was a Democrat and the legislative branch was Republican. So for 1 year, the legislature relatively stood its ground. They better dig foxholes now because it's fixing to get ugly.
I think it is.
This governor wants money in amounts and in ways that we have not seen in this state for a very long time.
But the problem is you got people that want the money right along with him, apparently Democrats and some Republicans.
Hey, look, 4 special words to always remember. In on the deal. The deal is raising taxes on people who work for a living and are taxed into oblivion already. The issue is how many people are in on the deal.
Mm-hmm.
All the employees, all the benefits, all the family members who benefit from that, all of their kin, all of the businesses that are associated. The number of people who are in on the deal to keep raising state spending is more than those of us who are not.
You know, Elliott, one of the great examples of that is going to be watch when the road. By the way, I think they passed the road tax. I think they passed it overwhelmingly. Watch the road tax that comes in. Watch your local community people that are telling people privately and in public, oh, we need this, this will be a great idea. And then they will be the ones that will benefit from it. I can sit you and name 4 or 5 right now that are for the road tax and will be 100% benefiting from it.
Well, it won't be new. We went through this when Buddy Roemer was governor. We put the money back. We did everything we knew we should do. We bid it. We swallowed it. Here they come acting like nothing that ever happened before.
Elliott, but to make a point of that and let you touch on this, they're not going to tell us, which has been my big bickering about the whole thing with the road tax. Tell me what you did with the money you had all these years. Show me exactly where it's gone. There's not even anybody in the so-called road committee, tax committee, they call it road committee or whatever it is. They're not talking about that. They could care less what happened to the money. It's what we're going to do now, but if we didn't spend money on roads back then, what makes you think you're going to spend money on roads now?
Well, and look, I want to be categorical about this. People who think they know how nasty a business it is to do the politics of a roadway. They're wrong. Until you've been in the middle of seeing, as Buddy Romer put it in that campaign back then, there's a lot more politics in a road in Louisiana than there is concrete. The DOTD is absolutely off the charts, wrong, ugly, nasty in everything that they do that has to do with choices about where highways go. Mm-hmm. If you're falling back on what the highway department is telling you about what we need in highways, that's your first mistake.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100% with you. Let me jump gears with you on one other thing. Money, and you may or may not know this, but I'm going to take it you probably know. When we start saying the state's going to get $500 million, and they drop to, or maybe up to $2 billion, does that money ever get to the citizens who really need it? Or does it just go to the government to hand out to governments for their government response? Forget all the Christian churches that went out there and did anything, and they don't want anything back. What about money directly to people? I know FEMA cuts a few checks, but my point is, when you hear $500 million up to $2 billion coming, who gets that? Where does that go?
Well, the answer is yes. Some of it makes it to those for whom it is intended. And those of us who give a lot of money and are blessed enough to be able to do that, we make choices based on the very fact that with some research you find out who does not get the money to the people who should get it. In government, you don't have those protections. That's why I have always believed, and I still believe, at least 30 cents on every dollar is blown. I mean that.
By the way, you're probably being conservative on
it. Could be. It may be half.
Yeah.
But my point is, by the time everybody that's taken a piece out of it to make their deal, keep it in place, a lot less of it reaches the intended recipient than any of us are ready to really accept. And it's a scandal. It is why people don't trust government, and they're right not to.
Yeah.
And that probably brings us to the Senate race, right?
No, well, I mean, it could be. Senate races, I think the Senate race is getting to be pretty interesting. As you know, everything has been concentrated on the presidential race. I've seen polls all over the place. I've seen polls everywhere, depending on who helped put them out. And I've seen the press run with polls that didn't make sense because it might have came from a candidate. I've seen everything under the sun of this, and I ain't getting involved in it. I'm going to let these ladies fight it out and see what happens. But I still think it's a Republican and Democrat. Do you see any way it's two Republicans?
I do. And look, let me give you a couple of stats just historically to keep in mind.
Okay, good.
And I know we'll get to revisit this, but we got 24 candidates in the race. That means that the magic number to make the runoff is low. I mean, my goodness. Think how many people can get, some piece when you got 24 of them.
Sure.
The good news about this race is that we can't figure out yet who's going to make the runoff. That could be good. It's also good that we find that David Duke is dead in the water.
Dead meat as
he may literally be at 2 or 3%.
That's
and that
where
would be
coming.
The greatest thing for us is that there could be.
Yep.
Remember this. In 1995, there were 15 candidates in the governor's race. I don't know if anybody even remembers all that, but Cleo Fields made the runoff with 15 candidates with 19% of the vote. Okay? Another one of note, nobody remembers these except some very few of us. By the way, John Kennedy included. He knows the number I'm about to give you very well. In 1971, when we had party primaries, there were 17 candidates in the Democratic primary. That's how Edwin Edwards was ultimately elected governor. 17 candidates. Bennett Johnston made the runoff in the Democratic primary against Edwin Edwards with 17.8. So, that's 17 candidates. 17.8 made the runoff. This is 24.
Wow.
Look, you could have somebody making the runoff with 14 or 15%. That means you got 4 or 5 candidates right now that could very easily be in the runoff.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. All right, we're going to do it again. We'll do it with the Senate race another day. Elliott, always, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, man.
All right, we'll take a quick break. Back, more of the Griffon Show right after this.